Today I'm comparing Photopills, the Photographers Ephemeris and Planit Pro. With the Milky Way season just around the corner, I'm comparing 3 different photography planning apps to see which one is best for you. They all have their strengths and weaknesses, so I want to know which one is the best value and which one I'll be using for planning shoots and using whilst I'm out shooting as well. Now, they are all paid apps, but the amount of value they give you far outweighs the cost of the apps. And for any kind of scouting, there's nothing better than to have an app that will help you get good photographs and actually plan and be able to see where, say, the Milky Way is going to be, where the sun's going to come up, or where the moon is going to set. Now, I'm not sponsored by any of these companies. I bought all of these myself so I could give you a completely unbiased opinion on all 3 apps. There are other apps out there that will do a similar job, but these were the 3 that kept on popping up when researching these kind of photo planning apps. Now, if you've never heard of these types of apps, they basically help in the planning stages of your photography shoots. You can look to see where the sun, the moon, and the Milky Way are going to be at any time and at any location on the planet. Some have a lot of features and some are quite basic, so until you've seen them all in use back to back, it's quite hard to work out which one is for you. I am looking at them with a view to helping you and your astrophotography, especially with the upcoming Milky Way season just around the corner. But in doing my research, I also found out the better ones for landscape photography and any kind of photography you'll be doing outdoors. So even if you're a portrait photographer, if you do some outdoor shoots, these will definitely help when planning those shoots. Now, I'm pretty lazy when it comes to learning apps. I want to install it and use it straight away. So I've tested them like this before doing any kind of research on them or reading any manuals or anything like that. So I can share with you which one was the easiest to get into straight away. Now, if you're a little bit lazy like me and just want to know my conclusions, go to this time code. But for a more in-depth look at these apps, keep watching. First of all, let's see what they all have in common. All 3 have the bird's eye Google Maps view with different types of maps, from topographical maps to satellite views and drawn maps. They show you in which direction the sun will rise and set, as well as which direction the moon will rise and set. You can search and do pin drops for specific locations and save locations to build up a shot list or a wish list of places to visit. They also give you the sunrise and sunset times, as well as the phase that the moon is in for the given date and time. As well as all that, they also give you the function of being able to swipe through time, giving you exact angles of sun and moonlight at any given time. All 3 have an augmented reality view, so this means you can overlay the sky at any given time over what your camera will see and have a look around for potential compositions when you're out scouting. However, Photopills is far superior, especially with one of the latest smartphones that can handle the processing power. My Huawei P30 Pro is really quick in this mode, whereas my older iPhone 7 struggles a little. It does work, but it takes some time to load up. The Photographers Ephemeris and Planit Pro have light pollution maps built into them, which is fantastic, whereas this feature does seem to be missing from Photopills. Photopills is a standalone app, so there's just one of them, whereas the Photographers Ephemeris and Planit Pro both have companion apps, of which you will have to pay extra for the Photographers Ephemeris. But with Planit Pro, it is free and it's an extra app for when you're out in the field, and it's called Planit Live. Photopills is the app that I've been using for a while, and I have done a video on it showing you how I use it to help my photography. If you haven't seen it yet, click on the eye in the corner or the link in the description. It is available on both iOS and Android and costs $9.99. It is a very versatile app that has everything from the bird's eye view planning map to the sun and moon cycles and much more. There are so many things in this app and a lot that I don't actually use, but you might find them useful. The first tile you have is the planner. If I want to know if something is going to line up, I'll use this to see in which direction the sun will rise or set, where the moon will be, and also to let me know quickly when it's going to get dark. You can swipe left or right on the information just below the tile, And there are 11 different data sets, as well as being able to drop a subject pin to see the elevation change between the two pin drops. Also, if you swipe along the timeline, it will change the time and the map will change color when going into the golden hour, through the different phases of twilight, and then into nighttime. The best bet with this is to start swiping along those bits of information along the top to see which ones are relevant for you. There is tons of information in this app, and some of it might be relevant, some of it might not. I find that there are one or two things that I really use all the time. There's other things that I use every now and then. The sun tile. To get actual times of the different phases, I'll go into the sun tab, and this will give me all the times I need. And in changing the settings in the tab in the right-hand corner, I can change the location, date, and times. Then once you're back out of this settings menu and back into the sun tab, you'll have all of the times listed from nighttime to blue hour, through the twilight phases, and when the sun will rise and set, and how long that golden light will last for before you go into daytime. The really cool function in this and the moon tab is the AR function, and that's augmented reality. You can click on this and it will put the sky you currently have programmed into your app as an overlay over your camera view. This is really good for planning, so you can visualize where the sun will be, and also out on location if you're trying to line something up with the landscape that you have. This is perfect for that. You can go to a location, have an idea for a subject and work out what you're going to have on the land below that, and then line it up perfectly so you know exactly where to come back to. The moon tile. In the moon tile, it gives you a little bit more information for astrophotography. Like in the sun tab, you can change the location, date, and time in the settings tab in the top right-hand corner. You then have the phase that the moon is currently in with the moonrise and the set times. If you swipe up and down, you can go through not only the moon times, but the sun times and the time at which the Milky Way core will be visible in the sky. Then at the bottom, a load more information you might find useful. I don't really use that bit at the bottom, but you might be able to. Like the sun tile, this also has the AR function, so you can see exactly where the moon is going to be at any given time and location. It does have an exposure guide where you can calculate how much your ND filter will change your exposure settings. So you can input your settings, tell it what ND filter you're going to use, and then it'll tell you what exposure you need to take and what settings you need to put in to get a good exposure with that ND filter. A depth of field calculator, so you can plug in your lens, camera, and aperture, and how far in you will focus into your shot, and it will give you lots of data back. A field of view calculator, where again you plug in all of the settings and the camera that you are using, and it'll bounce back more data. With a depth of field table and a hyperfocal table, these give you so much information, so for all of you geeks out there, this is perfect. The night augmented reality function is great for working out where the Milky Way will be in your sky in real time. Like the other augmented reality functions in the sun tab and the moon tab, this is great when you're out scouting. I often look like I'm trying to find a signal on my phone when I'm actually just using this function. Like all the other settings I use, you can change the date and location in the settings tab in the top right-hand corner. Once you do that, you'll have the Milky Way and celestial objects overlaid over your camera view. So in the day, you can see where the Milky Way will be at the time you've set, and plan what time you need to come back to that location to get the shot that you want. The meteor shower is a new function, and it gives you the calendar dates where these up and coming meteor showers might be in your area or where they're going to be around the world. A star trails calculator, so you know how many shots to take to get the right amount of trailing for the photo that you're after. With spot stars, you can work out how long your exposure can be before you start streaking your stars. This is the 500 rule, which I've done a video on, and that's linked in the corner or in the description. And with these higher megapixel cameras, it's also known as the NPF rule. With the time-lapse calculator, you can plan time lapses and calculate how many shots you will need, how much time it will take, and how much memory you will need to cover the whole of the time lapse. A timer for taking things like boiling an egg, or maybe how long your time lapse might be, which might be useful, but most phones have this in anyway. But it's an extra tab there. a subject distance calculator so you can work out how far away from the subject you need to be to get it all in the frame for the given focal length you're using, and a focal length match where you can work out the same framing for two different types of camera. This might be great if you have a friend coming along with a crop sensor or a different sized censored camera and you wanted to make sure you both could get a similar framing. So there is tons of information and calculators in this app. It's absolutely huge, but it's actually quite straightforward to use. I don't use all of these, but the main ones I do use are the planner, the sun and the moon tiles, and the night AR tile. Photopills is also building a community, and they have lots of this in My Stuff tab, where you can find different points of interest and you can submit photos for some of the competitions they hold, as well as a lot of other stuff in there. And then there's the Academy tab, where you'll find tons of tutorials from the creators. These are really good, and you can pretty much find a tutorial on or close to whatever you have planned to help you get the most out of the app. I've used this app and it's pretty straightforward. You go into it and you've got those tiles. All you need to do is work out what you want to plan and what you want to see and where you want to see it. Just click on that. So if you want to see, say, a sunrise or sunset, click on the sun tab. And if you're at that location, use the AR function. If you're planning around the moon, click on the moon tab and go down and use that AR function again. You can swipe left or right while you're in these AR functions to change the time, and then you move your phone around and look to see where the moon is going to be in real time. So it's pretty straightforward, and the more you use it, the more you'll get used to it. Planit Pro is a huge app that has so many functions. Like Photopills, it's $9.99, but Planit Pro also has Planit Live, which is a free supplemental app. It's also available for both iOS and Android. When I first started using Planit Pro, I got a little bit frustrated by things not doing what I wanted them to do, or not being able to find certain functions. But after a while, it does become a lot easier. This is the app that does take the most time to learn how to use it to its fullest potential. But when you get past this, it really is a great tool for your photography, and there's so many different functions in there. When you open it up, it looks similar to the planner in Photopills with a bird's eye view. You have the information bar along the top and then a timeline along the bottom. It shows the sun and moon rise and set positions, and if you swipe right and left on the timeline, you will see the position of the sun and the moon at that given time. They do have the sun and moon images on each line, so there's no mistaking which one is which. And these are basically just the compass angles that you'll find the moon or the sun at. And then when you go into nighttime, you'll see this 3D projection of the Milky Way. You can search for different locations in the top right-hand corner, and there is a drop-down menu on the top left which gives you access to a load more things. With the information header, you have 19 different types of information you can swipe left or right to get through these. These are basically the Ephemeris tabs in the drop-down menu. On the map, you have a locator for your current location, which turns into a compass pointer when you rotate the map at all. Different map projections like on Google Maps, a zoom in or out slider, which is actually really useful, then a plus button where you can add a camera and a scene, and then the viewfinder button. Because it's pretty complex, you also have the assistant button, which you can hide if you don't like it. And if you have a small screen on your phone, I would hide this once you know what everything is. Along the date area, if you click on the clock on the left-hand side, it will reset to the current date and time. If you tap on the date, it will give you options to put in a different date and a different time. With the forward and backward tabs, you can scroll through the calendar events, and if you click on the calendar tab to the right, this will list all of those events. With the timeline along the bottom, if you swipe left and right, it will move through the timeline here and on the map. It'll show you where the moon and the sun are at those given times, as well as the Milky Way. That is, if the Milky Way is in your sky at that time of night that you've selected and that location. I really do like this Milky Way projection as it gives a kind of 3D look. The closer to the core you are, the bigger those circles get, and they also turn green towards the core. Also, if you click on the timeline, it will change the scale of the timeline from minutes to hours to days to months and years. So you can quickly move to a distant time or just scroll a few minutes into the future or the past. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail with this app as there is so much to learn, but these are the key aspects of this app. First, there are the pin drops. You can set the camera to the location by clicking plus and selecting the camera location. This will drop the camera right in the middle of where you are on the map. Then you move the center point to the subject point you may want to photograph, press plus and set scene location. Then click the viewfinder button and you have a few different options. From your focal distance, a drone view, a panorama, focal length, field of view and distance from camera to subject. Basically tons of information to help you plan your shot. Now, I told you there was a lot in this one, and I wasn't lying. When you click on the viewfinder button, there is also this list above it. You have Street View, but you do need to open Google Maps for this. Then Viewfinder Picture. When you first click on this, it will tell you what to do. And the same with AR. This is augmented reality. The AR function is okay, but it's nowhere near as detailed as Photopills. It just seems like a bit of an afterthought. You can see the Milky Way as these green set of circles, and the moon and the sun are in there as well, but they're tiny and you can see the lines more than you can see them. The option that I find quite useful in this app is the Viewfinder VR function, but you do have to download some data to use this offline. With this VR view, you can see it as a useful tool to work out your shot, from what will be in your shot to what focal distance you will use. Whilst in this, you can scroll through the info panel at the top and it will give you different projections in this view, like the Milky Way if it's in the shot, star trails and many more different projections. Also, if you move the image, you can change your framing, as well as clicking on the focal length to change the field of view and swiping on the timeline to change the time of day. And when I first opened this app and found this function, I didn't know how to get back out of this view. This was one of the things that frustrated me. Until I realized all you do is click on the back button in the top left-hand corner, and then you're back to the bird's eye view. I did feel a little bit stupid after finding that one, as once you've clicked on it, it's pretty obvious. One other thing to see is the light pollution overlay. If you click on the drop-down menu in the top left-hand corner and click on Ephemeris, you'll have a ton of information here. But don't worry about that. This is just a different way of showing all of the information in that top bar on the main page. It's just shown in a different way. All you need to do is click on the dark sky circle. Now when you zoom out, you'll see the light pollution projection on your map, which is much better than the Photographers Ephemeris version on Android, where you're limited to how much you can zoom in. Also, in the information panel along the top, now you have your Bortle scale for that location. This is fantastic for knowing what the light pollution will be like in that location you're planning to visit. This is basically a light pollution scale from 0 to 10. The darker the sky, the lower the number. Basically, anything with a Bortle rating of 4 or below is really good for astrophotography. And also with this function, once you've worked out which way you want to take the photograph, you can zoom out and have a look to see how much light pollution is in the direction that you're going to be shooting, because at night, you'll be surprised how far that light travels. So you can see there is so much to learn in this app, and it's all centered around this bird's eye view. Now, there are loads of tutorials on this one from the creators here on YouTube, and I'll link them in the corner and in the description. So if you like the look of it, check those out. Planit Live is the accompanying app to Planit Pro, which is an app that is to be used on location. It has a really simple layout and is really straightforward to use. This is really good as the main app, as you've just seen, is pretty complex when you first start using it. There are different cards which show you different bits of information you might need to know on the fly. It shows you the date and the state of the moon and which phase it's in at that time. Then below that, it has the sun and the moon positions. These use the built-in compass, and so you can point the phone in the right direction, so as you move it around, you can work out in which direction it's going to rise or which direction it's going to set. If you swipe left and right, it will move through the time, showing you the locations at that time, as well as the actual rising and setting times for the moon and the sun. If you scroll down, you then have the Milky Way times, elevations and positions in the sky, as well as the times it will be visible above the horizon, and when nighttime ends, losing the Milky Way to the daylight. And if that wasn't enough, in the top right-hand corner of this Milky Way card, you have the Bortle classification for the location that you're at. The only downside to this app is that it only works for 5 days ahead and 5 days behind. If you try going past these, it pops up a message, and it looks like in the future, to unlock this, there will be a monthly fee or a subscription. But if you're just using it on location, this shouldn't be too much of a problem. The Photographers Ephemeris is quite a basic app and is the cheapest standalone app. Both Photopills and Planit Pro far outweigh it in every aspect, as this is just the bird's eye view app and you can only do a few bits of basic planning with it. However, it does have 2 additional apps that can be bought in a bundle with it or bought separately. Now, one of these is absolutely fantastic, and I'll show you it in a minute. If you buy this alone, it is $2.99, so it's the cheapest, but when you buy it with the other 2 apps, it comes in at $19.99. So to get the full functionality of the Photographers Ephemeris, it is the most expensive. One thing I didn't realize is that the iOS version for iPhone is much more sophisticated than the Android version. And the 2 extra apps aren't even on Android, which is a real shame as they do have some really great functions. The Photographers Ephemeris iOS app is $9.99, so it's exactly the same price as Photopills and Planit Pro. But it does have more functions and it's more in line with those other 2 apps. Like Planit Pro, this has the bird's eye view as standard. It shows you your sun and moon rise and set positions, and then it has 5 different sets of information along the bottom. If you swipe the clock face side to side, it will change the time, and if you swipe left or right on the information panel, you can access different bits of information. These are the sun and moon rise and set times, twilight times, sun and moon angles at the given time, the distance and elevation between the 2 pins that you might set on the map, and a way to set the elevation at the horizon. This is probably to make sure you get an accurate sunrise time for your location and the mountains or buildings that are around you that may obscure that sunrise. Then along the right-hand side of the map, you have your current location locator. So you click on this and it'll drop the pin exactly where you are. That is if you've told the app that it's allowed to use your location when using this app. The pin drop button, which will drop a pin in the middle of the map where you are at that present time. Different map projections, and then the really cool function, which is the light pollution map projection. Like in Planit Pro, the light pollution map projection is great as it tells you what the light pollution will be at that location. The only downside to the Photographers Ephemeris version of this is that you can't zoom in all the way like in Planit Pro. I really did feel restricted with this when I was using it, and I would much prefer to be able to zoom in more. When you're in all of the other map functions, you can zoom in, so I don't see why they've limited it for us. If you use an iPhone, when you open up the Photographers Ephemeris, you'll notice it's a lot more detailed than on an Android phone, and it does look a little busy. Also, the layout is very different. On the right-hand side, we have a locator and a pin drop, but a few different things. If you press this mountain and grey tag button, it actually puts up a second pin where you can work out the distances, and then it also has geodetics enabled. This is just a fancy term for basically showing you whether you have a line of sight from the red pin to the grey pin, and you can see the profile of the land on this graph that has popped up at the bottom. If I change the position of this red pin a little bit down the hill, you can see from the graph that you no longer have a line of sight, so this is actually a really good feature. It means that you can plan your location and your potential subject and then work out what might be in the way. So if I just put the red pin back to the lookout, then the graph changes again and I have a line of sight once again. Next, if I click on the Layers button, it brings up a few different options. We have the light pollution map, and in this app, unlike on the Android version, you can zoom in on iPhones. So you can see here, I'm zooming out and it has the light pollution overlay, and then zooming back in. One thing that is missing is the Bortle scale to show you what the different colors mean. So there is room for improvement. It also has this cloud button, which is a function called Skyfire. Skyfire is basically a subscription weather forecast model built into the app. So another way, you have to pay more money to get more functions. But with apps such as Clear Outside, which are free weather forecasting apps, there really isn't any need to have to pay for things like this. Like all of the other apps, when you click on the date and time, this will give you the option to change them. And then in this, you also have events listed. So sunrises, sunsets, and things like that. Also, when you drag backwards and forwards on the timeline, you will get the directions of the sun and the moon, including the sun and moon rise and the sun and moon set. You also have this visual search function where you can type in different parameters to look for. So the iOS version of the Photographers Ephemeris is far more detailed than the Android version. And this is a little annoying, as Photopills and Planit Pro have put in the effort to build their full apps for both platforms. One other thing that the Photographers Ephemeris has in the iOS version is the AR function. You can see that we've got the Milky Way, which is represented by these circles. For some reason, it has the pin hanging in midair, and it's quite strange that they've got this. But anyway, you can see the sun and the moon, and you can also see the two trajectory lines of the sun and the moon. It also has this little ball in front that sits on the screen the whole time. This shows any kind of shadows there might be. So when you shine some virtual light from the sun or the moon in the app, it shows which way the shadows are going to be cast and which way the light will fall on your subject. One thing to note is that in both Planit Pro and the Photographers Ephemeris, because there is so much information on the screen, it actually works better on a tablet. So here you can see I have my iPad mini and I have a lot more room to see what's going on and see where I'm planning my shoot. Whereas with Photopills, I've never felt like I've needed more space to work the app effectively. Again, the iPad version of the Photographers Ephemeris is a lot more detailed than the Android version. So avoid the Photographers Ephemeris if you are on Android. Now on to the second two apps that are in the bundle, or that you have to buy separately. These are the Photographers Ephemeris 3D and Photo Transit, but they are only available on iOS as of February 2020. Hopefully they will make these for the Android system soon. The Photographers Ephemeris 3D is a way of giving you realistic views of a location so you can really hone in on where you want to go in the planning stage. Where the basic app lacks, this one really does make up for it. However, it's another $10, so you will be outlaying $20 in total for the Photographers Ephemeris package. I really do think this is well worth investing in, as you can really plan your shots almost down to exactly where you're going to be standing. Well, more or less anyway, give or take a couple of feet. It uses topographical maps to create a 3D environment you can fly around in, and you can move the camera to wherever you want and then change the time and date to what it might be when you're at that location. Then you can swipe through the timeline to get the sunrise and the sunset, or through the night to see when the Milky Way will come into view. Also, when you drag the timeline along the bottom, it will give you the shadows you might expect to see when the sunlight comes up above the horizon, and this is absolutely fantastic. You can also see the line of the Milky Way, and then this white line shows where the core of the Milky Way will be passing through your shot. It also has all of the constellations, so you can work out what stars are going to be in the sky, so this is really powerful. You then have this yellow line which shows the sun, and the blue line which shows the moon. So it basically shows the line of trajectory of the sun, the moon, and the Milky Way core. The three arrows along the bottom point towards where the sun, the moon, and the Milky Way core are. So if they're not in your view, you know where they are behind the camera, behind you, or to the sides of the view that you're currently looking at. If you click on Enhance, and that's that magic wand square, It will then give you a much more detailed view. At night, you will get a starry sky in the background, including where the Milky Way is going to be and how it might look, which will give you a much more realistic shot. And with this extra detail in the 3D landscape, this is fantastic when you're swiping through the timeline and looking for those shadows and looking to see when the sun will hit your subject. So you can see this example up in Glencoe in Scotland, looking west-southwest. My wife and I were hiking here a few years ago, and even though it was rainy and stormy, I still got quite a good shot. And to be honest, in Scotland, it's really hard not to get a good shot. So if I put them side by side, you can see how close the 3D representation is of the actual shot. So this is fantastic when it comes to planning new locations and new shoots. In this mode, the shadows do have more detail in them. Also, it will give you a focal length when you zoom in and out. This looks okay depending on what device you're viewing it on. On my iPhone 7, it was kind of like a really wide, long shot, but on my iPad, it was much more realistic. This is my favorite app that the Photographers Ephemeris make, and I think it's a fantastic planning tool. You can be sat at your desk, you can use Google Maps, and you can use a few other apps to find locations. It basically builds a 3D map of that landscape using the contour lines. And it is actually fantastic, and it is actually quite realistic. The third app that comes in the package is the Photographer's Transit. This is again quite a basic app and shows you what your field of view will be from the camera's location through to the position of your planned subject. It also gives you the difference in heights between the two locations, the distance, and you can program in your camera and lens to give you the field of view you might get. This is okay, but you need to be able to visualize it in your mind to really get an idea of what you're shooting. And I think the 3D app is much better than this. One thing I really didn't like was the app description in What is Transit, and also the About page. Did seem a little bit pretentious. They do, however, have a quick start guide that is really helpful. So just ignore the About page. Thinking about it, it would have been much better if these apps were all in one. Having to switch back and forth from one app to the other does get a little bit annoying after a while. It'd be much better if we just had tabs that we could switch between and stay in one app. Overall, the Photographers Ephemeris is the most basic in the initial app. But then with the addition of the two other apps, it does turn the tables a little bit and it becomes a lot more sophisticated. However, that does come at twice the cost. And as of February 2020, the Photographers Ephemeris 3D and the Photo Transit only seem to be available on iOS and not Android. The basic Photographers Ephemeris app is a lot more advanced on the iOS system though. So unlike Planit Pro and Photopills, the Photographers Ephemeris is only really made for the Apple ecosystem. So if you're an Android user, avoid this one, as it does seem like a bit of an afterthought. And they haven't even made the 3D version or the Photographer's Transit for Android. They also have a web-based PC app, which is very basic like the Android app. And you can get an idea of where the sun will be rising and at what time. And with the topographical map, you can work out where the shadows may lie. This should be good for basic planning, but not much more than that. As for using the app, I did find it really easy and straightforward to use. And after a few searches, I was easily able to navigate around the app. It does feel a little limited, and there's no way of finding out where the Milky Way is in this basic app. The 3D app is great for astrophotography, and it will give you a detailed night sky above a 3D generated landscape from the topographical map. I'd still want to do a recce before going out at night, or before going where it's still dark and I'm going out for a sunrise shoot, but this app definitely ups the game and it makes planning so much better and so much easier. Photopills is a great all-rounder, and if you do lots of different types of photography, from time-lapses to astrophotography, this will definitely fit the bill. Their augmented reality is great, and I think it's one of the best. And as long as your phone or device is powerful enough to cope with the processing power needed, this is fantastic, and it's almost worth buying it just for this function. There are a lot of functions in this app that I don't use, But it's always handy having all of these different calculators and all of these different data tables handy, just in case you do need them. I think this is one of those apps that the more you get into it, the more you'll find. Now for Planit Pro, I think this is the most complicated of the three in my opinion. I found it pretty frustrating to use and get into, but this is because there is so much to it. Once you do learn the app and start using it on a daily or weekly basis, it does become a lot easier. The nice feature of this app is the camera view, but you do have to download extra data to get this to work. This might be of concern if you're limited in data usage and in physical memory on your phone. It's not a huge amount, but if you travel a lot and keep planning in different areas, this may start to build up over time. On smaller phones, as there is so much going on the screen, it does seem a little bit cluttered and busy. But again, this is due to there being so much to this app. So I'd suggest using this with a tablet over a phone. So to sum it all up, if you're a general photographer that does the odd landscape shoot, but wants to get out into getting more planned shots, Photopills is for you, and you'll find a lot of different tools in there that will help your photography. If you like planning your shots but don't want too much detail or don't want to learn an app through and through, and don't mind spending a little bit more cash, the Photographers Ephemeris package is for you. However, you will need to be an Apple fan as the 3D and photo transit apps don't work on Android. If you're an avid landscape photographer and really like planning your shots in great detail, and on a tablet preferably, get Planit Pro and Planit Live as well. These are really detailed and it'll take a while to learn, but once you master them, you will really be able to get into the nitty-gritty of planning your shoot to a whole nother level. Now, if you're on a budget or you don't have a budget and you still like the look of these, I'd suggest using the Photographers Ephemeris web application for your planning, and then Planit Live when you're on location. Both of these are free and they'll really help with your planning. Now, do you have any of these apps? If you haven't, but I've piqued your interest, which one do you think you're going to go for? Or are you just super old school and just go out and shoot after watching a good weather forecast? Whichever you are, let me know in the comments below. It'll be great to hear your thoughts. Now, to show you how I plan my photography shoots, click on this next video here, and to see how I shoot the stars and the Milky Way, click on this video down here. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe for weekly tutorials on photography every Monday and Thursday. I'll see you next time.